guys, welcome to Hasty Vegan. I'm Shayla and thank you so much for tuning in today. Today we're going to be making Zuppa Tuscona Soup, vegan of course. For those of you who are familiar with Olive Garden, a restaurant here in the United States, it is one of their soups on their soup menu, also their unlimited soup breadstick salad menu, which I will not even tell you guys how much of that I have eaten. But of course it's not vegan, so I wanted to find a recipe that was vegan. Today's recipe is by Veggie Society, and of course that's going to be linked below in the description, and you guys can use that to follow along. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do in making our soup is heat our pan with the olive oil in the recipe. So the bottom of my pan is got the olive oil, it's heated, and we're going to sear our sausage. So for our sausage, I have Beyond Meat Italian sausage. I went with the hot Italian. How I cooked this, or how I cut this, is I did put the sausage in the freezer so that way I could go ahead and cut it in slices. The first time I did this, as you can see, it's really squishy because they've thawed out by this point. It's really squishy. So they kind of mush when you go to cut them. So I put them in the freezer for just a little bit in order to get them to be solid enough to cut. So what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna saute, if you will, our sausage here just to get it seared. And along the lines of it being pretty flimsy, let's make sure we're in focus here. And along the lines of it being flimsy, we want to make sure that we don't over stir in order to make sure we don't have mushy sausage. The flavor will still get in, as it did the last time that I made this. However, we want solid sausage. it matters more from a consistency or a texture purpose. So we're just gonna let that sit for a minute and get that brown. This recipe is a pretty simple recipe. It's just a matter of getting everything cut, I would say, is what takes the longest. After that, it's just a matter of layering in the ingredients. We're gonna cook our sausage and then we're gonna start layering in our onions and then all the other ingredients that are gonna come together to make this soup. All right. So you can brown this up to the point that you would like it. Sorry guys, I am right-handed, so I apologize if it goes out of focus for a second as I'm stirring. Need to learn how to be ambidextrous. I think I said that wrong. All right, well that is starting to smell really good. As you can see, there's a lot of the char, or excuse me, the juices from the sausage in the bottom. Heads up guys, this sausage, I don't know if I said this is Beyond Meat. Yeah, I did. Beyond Meat sausage, but the sausage links by themselves, I just pan fry them so good. Like legitimately ate one the other night by itself. There were supposed to be 4 in here, now there's 3. You know, it's fine. It's whatever. It was so good and worth it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get a spoon that has slots in it so I can keep the oil in there. And I'm just gonna pull our sausage into the bowl that I originally had them in, and we're gonna set that to the side. So I'm putting those to the side. And now what we want to do is we're going to want to add our onions and our teaspoon of chili pepper flakes. So I have 1 onion here with our chili pepper flakes already on here. And be careful with the oil. You don't want it to pop up and get you. Also, you could obviously do this all in a separate pan and move it over, but I think that keeping it as a one-pan recipe keeps the flavors in. You don't want to lose the juice from the sausage. You don't want to lose the juice or the flavor that you're getting and that you're building up in the bottom of this pan. So keep it as a one pot dish here. All right, so we're just gonna stir that up. And of course, with your regular saute, you're gonna keep going until it gets translucent. All right, so the next thing we wanna do while this is still getting translucent is we want to add in our garlic. So we have 6 cloves of garlic, which is about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that in and let it saute. We're gonna wanna cook until we can smell that garlic kind of coming out of those fumes. So just kind of waft it towards you. I can smell that. That's so good. I love garlic. And I think I mentioned in a previous video that I typically do a lot more garlic than usually is required. I just love garlic. All right. The next thing is the recipe does call for a 1/3 cup of white wine. Cooking wine. I typically don't have any type of cooking wine on hand, but it did say that we could substitute with our veggie broth. And so I have a 1/3 cup of veggie broth. And what you're gonna wanna do here is, had there been any shards on the bottom of the pan, which there was before I added the garlic, you would want to make sure that that's all scraped up in this recipe. So we wanna start adding the rest of our ingredients. The first big item we want is our potatoes. So I've gone ahead and got 2 pounds of golden potatoes. You can use any potatoes you want really, but if you want that creamy texture, you're gonna get that out of your golden potatoes. So I've already cut them up in our bowl here. Now the recipe does say to cut about 1/4 of an inch, and it does not say to cut the way that I did. It just says slice them, but I find that I like the bite-sized texture better. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this to our pot. All right, then we're gonna add a bay leaf. So I've got our bay leaf here. Hopefully it'll focus in. We're gonna put that in. And then we're gonna put thyme and smoked paprika. I also have a little bit of our fennel in here. I wanted to try it out earlier in the recipe because I found that I needed more than the recipe called for when I was taste testing at the end. All right, and then we want to pour in our veggie stock. Now it does call for 7 cups of veggie stock. However, I found that last time, simply because I didn't have enough, 6 worked, and I liked the consistency of the soup with only 6. So I'm gonna pour in the first 2 cups here. And then I'm going to pour in 1 whole container, since this equals 4 cups. And again, the brand that I use is Organics. Here in the United States, it's a Tom Thumb Albertsons brand. It's the flavor of veggie broth that I like the best. And it's also very clean ingredients, very minimal. I trust this brand. I like their chickpeas and most of their stuff I get. Once we add the broth, we're going to want to stir everything up and then bring our heat up a little bit until we get to a simmer. So for me, a simmer is where it's not boiling, but it's kind of holding a small boil. You can tell it's hot, basically. So I can see that in my pan a little bit. It's starting to have a little bit of a little bubble, heat bubble going down there. And then what we want to do is we're going to add our nutritional yeast and then a pinch of salt. So here's our nutritional yeast. It's 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And then for our salt, what I've been trying to do lately is use my hickory smoked salt because it gives it more of a meaty flavor. but you want to be careful and not use too much of it, simply because it's strong and it's kind of potent. So I'm going to go ahead and put just a teaspoon of our salt here. All right. And then we're going to stir. So what you want to do is, at this stage, is we're just letting this boil and simmer. Excuse me. We're going to let this simmer until the potatoes are soft but still hold their shape. So let's do that. All right, so the next step here is going to be our kale. So of course with kale, this is towards the end of the recipe. So making sure that your potatoes are how you want them is really important, because everything else doesn't need to be in here for long or it will overcook. So for our kale, here is 1 leaf of kale, and typically you're gonna want 4 cups of this. Not typically, you are gonna want 4 cups. You're gonna want 4 cups of kale shredded. So either you can rip off starting from the bottom and throw in, or you can of course, chop. So I'm gonna just go ahead and rip this guy up, and then we're gonna go ahead and pour in the rest of our kale. And it's just gonna add some beautiful color. It is gonna get dark, especially the longer it sits in there, but I love adding kale to this. And it doesn't taste like kale once it's in there. So I'm gonna just kind of stir that in a little bit, but not too much, because now we're gonna add in that cashew, which is simply taking a cup of cashews that have been soaked and a cup of water and blending them until they're really smooth. And so we're gonna add that here. And this is really what's gonna make this a creamy soup. And I did not plan my bowl size really well, so I have 2 of these. This is a little bit more of the watery side. Make sure we get everything. And of course, the recipe does say that if you had wanted this to be a little bit thicker, what you would do is add a tapioca, excuse me, that's how you say it, a tapioca starch to the mixture when you're making this cashew dish, or this cashew blend, and it would thicken up your soup. So as you can see, it's already starting to make it look creamier. Isn't that awesome? Just keep stirring, let it sit. That was contradictory. Stir, and then let it sit for a second. Let it kind of get that little bowl back up, and then we're gonna go ahead and add the sausage in. While you're here, you can also do a small taste test. Of course, the cashews haven't had a chance to take on the whole flavors that have been simmering for the past 10 or 15 minutes, but we want to get an idea. Do we need more fennel? Do we need more salt, etc.? In the morning, it is hot. I do want to go ahead and put our sausage in. So let's go ahead and pour that in. And then we're going to stir and then taste test again. Look how beautiful that is. Looks creamy. Sausage intact. And one tip that I do for flavor, obviously the longer a soup sits, the more flavor that it has. So I do leave that bay leaf in until I'm done with the soup. That way it just constantly is given as much flavor as it possibly can. So we have our finished product. Time to taste test. I have been mentioning the flavors throughout cooking this, so let's see if we get what I expected. In this bite, I have a little bit of the sausage, I have some kale, those gorgeous looking onions, and of course a little bit of potato. Definitely meaty. Definitely pulls everything together. You're getting solid, for lack of a better term. You're getting creaminess, of course, like I said, from the cashews. You're getting it from even the broth itself, of course, providing that juicy flavor. And then with the potatoes and the sausage, you're getting that solid texture coming in, soft but solid coming in, balancing out that creamy. So good. For the seasonings, I did add a little bit of pepper and a little bit more salt. I would, of course, taste test after the sausage gets in and it simmers for a little bit, just to make sure you're not going to add too much salt. I am really loving this, and I hope you guys do too. So if you did enjoy this recipe, please let me know in the comments below. Also, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that way you'll get notified every single time I post a video. Until next time.